Well, they are going to look into it. We've started those investigations. As you know, we met with John Dart of the CIA, who assured us that he was going to do everything that he could to be cooperative. I've met with the Inspector General from the Justice Department, and we know that based on our work, they have to get started with the investigations. We think it's important for us to know as much as we can possibly know. That way we will understand when they're sidestepping, we will understand when they're missing people they should be talking to. So we're compiling not only the list of names of folks who are involved and getting these kinds of documents so that if this information is not available in the investigation, we can step forward and hand it to them or make them know that they're missing certain things, they haven't talked to certain people. So we are going to be friendly volunteer assistants to the investigations as they go along.
Congresswoman,
yes.
You mentioned Blandone's testimony in San Diego. Didn't he also say that he severed his ties with whatever he had with the Contras before he met Ricky Ross, so there was no direct connection? Didn't he also testify that?
I don't know that information. He may have. However, it is up to the investigations to look at all of the dates, because they knew that Blandone and Meneses were drug dealers before they ever came to the United States. So it is important for the investigation to look at the dates and the flow of the drugs and all of that.
But if he had testified, we believe that's the fact in the transcript, wouldn't that break the connection between the Contras and Ricky Ross? He said he was in it for himself, he was keeping all the money at that point.
I don't know. Investigation should bear that out. Yes.
In terms of trying to get a special committee set up with subpoena powers?
Well, actually, the Intelligence Committee of Congress does have subpoena powers. The chair of that committee at this time is Mr. Combest. We don't know if he will be chair when we get back, because if the Democrats take back over the House, then our ranking member, Mr. Dix, will move up to that position. So while they have opened the investigation, there are some things in limbo with that aspect of the Intelligence Committee, depending on who is the chair. The chair does have subpoena powers.
What's your confidence level of justice or CIA conducting investigation? How important is it to have an independent congressional committee?
Well, we think it's important that the Inspector General, who is supposed to be independent, is doing this for both the CIA and the Justice Department. However, we cannot help but be concerned about whether or not there will be some attempt to do what is traditional, and that is protect the secrecy of the CIA. So that is why you will see such in-depth involvement of me and others who will continue to respond to requests from people who want to talk to us, and when we have the opportunity to access certain information that may be difficult for others, we will continue to do that parallel with any investigation so that we can give them, assist them at the appropriate time. Yes, Mr. Brown.
Ms. Waters, have you been in contact with the president and his people about this to see what effort he might be able to bring to bear in terms of focusing the investigation?
No, what I have done is I have made it known to everybody what I'm doing, including people at the White House. What I have not wanted is, I have not wanted this to be just a political argument in an election year where one is blaming the other. What I want is, I want investigations and let the chips fall where they may.
But it is a political issue. These are allegations that occur, events that occurred during the Republican administration.
That's right.
How forthright is the Republican leadership in pursuing this?
Well, I have to tell you that Newt Gingrich did get his chair of his committee, Mr. Combest, to open the investigation. I talked with Newt Gingrich. I sent him letters. He was also kind of lobbied by some other people in the Washington area who had been at one of our workshops. And as a result of our lobbying him, so Newt Gingrich did meet with and talk with his chair of that committee, and I'm sure that's part of the reason why, if not the whole reason why, the investigation is done. The Speaker really does have the power to get these things started, and I must say that he did cooperate.
What efforts are being made to build a coalition with
I'm sorry, what was the question?
This has been the last few weeks, the month and a half that it's moving. It's primarily been an effort within the African American community to organize and raise awareness and educate. There doesn't seem to be much going on in the Latino community or among Latinos.
Well, I think that it's going to catch up. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with Lucille Roybal Allard, and I had a conversation with Esteban Torres, both of whom are interested and will be involved. And I think it's just a matter of time. We are providing some leadership, but I think not only will we have Latino involvement, we're going to have the involvement of many people, even who come from the more conservative spectrum politically, because of their outrage that their government could have been involved in activities such as this. We will see more involvement.
That's going to have to be the last one, folks. We're going to go over to the site across the street. If you like to follow the Congresswoman, or we can point to the actual location of the...
A lot of information, and you're going to have to do like I do. You're going to have to take it home and kind of really read it and look at it. But I think this will be interesting. We spent some time to try and understand what is a kilo, how much do you get out of a kilo, because some people were saying, oh, that really wasn't much that was being distributed. And let me tell you what we found out. For example, and this you'll want to learn because, I mean, you don't know this stuff. This represents 35.28 ounces. This is the size of a kilo. This is at the time of this operation on the street. This kilo sold for $40,000. Ricky Ross, because he was getting it so much of it from Blandone, was able to sell it substantially cheaper at like $20,000. Out of 1 ounce, you can get 36 ounces out of this kilo. Out of 1 ounce, when it's cut with baking soda or other substances, you get 300 rocks. That's just out of 1 ounce of the 36 ounces. And each of these rocks, I guess now are sold for about $10, $20, $20. At that time, I think they were sold for about $10.
Is that the real thing?
No. 1 kilo, one of these, can produce over 10,000 rocks. One of these, 10,000 rocks, with a retail value of over $100,000. So, if you can understand, when somebody says to you, oh, if Blandone was dealing 10 kilos a week out of this address, you have to be able to say that's 1 million rocks. You understand what I'm saying? If this was but one of the locations, and we know Mr. Arguellos, who's listed in your search warrant, had 20 of these, then he had another 2 million rock cocaine. Now you multiply that by any other operations that may have been going on, you can understand how we are not only upset, but that we now understand why we were beginning to see so much addiction and so many people on the street and so many of the homeless people who are just kind of cracked out of their minds. The crack cocaine was plentiful, it was in large amounts, it was accessible, and it was being brought in here at prices that undercut substantially the going market.
Where were the other locations? The city and other locations. Where were they, you know?
The other locations that we listed are the storage locations. What we don't have listed in here, which we probably will surface at some point, is the Ricky Ross locations. Because Ricky Ross locations, for the most part, were further down into South Central Los Angeles. I beg your pardon? Yes, and one of the things that we have to get more information about, some people will say, oh, they only brought in 5 tons over a 10-year period of time. And then they say, when you take a length of time, that wasn't very much. That is not true, and the information that we will continue to bring to you is that the tonnage was brought in over a much shorter period of time at the highlight of the distribution. We're only talking about 2 to 3 years. Okay, fine. I guess that concludes our press conference for today. You have the information. If after you read this information, you have additional questions, feel free to call me at my office. I will be happy to respond to you. And again, the actual location of the beer bar. What's going on?
You know, not me and all of. Just sort of follow me in, okay? Here we go. Is this where they told me? Go.
Aquí es la sala de visitas, señor.
Correcto.
Gracias. Here. Izquierda. Derecha.
A la derecha,
Aquí.
Fue la sala de visitas. La sala de visitas.
La sala de visitas es ahí.
Wait, here? No. Okay.
Las boletas para escoger presidente y vicepresidente y la de alcalde de Banaco.
Mira, ya está listo.
¿Quién es el que anda de responsable? ¿Y usted?
Sí, yo soy Mercedes yo soy Mercedes Chexa, que ha hecho lo de la entrevista, y él es el correcto. Pero él nos dijo, yo le dije a su abogado que comprara aquí. Pero yo le dije que era con cámara, que era para la televisión.
Así que no puede, dice, no lo puede recibir. Si apagan la cámara, lo recibe.
He says now that he will talk only off camera. He will
Not what the
talk.
arrangement was.
Eso
just
no fue
talk-
lo que sí, no, you know, I mean, with cameras.
Yeah. Can I go with you and talk to him?
Que si puede ir a hablar él solo sin la cámara. Sin cámara.
So,
Solamente
one for
así,
one.
pues él.
His English is good, right?
Solo él iría,
Just for 2
sin
minutes.
cámara.
Can he come? No? No. Around here? Habla inglés. Un poquitito. Yeah, but okay, before this happens. All right.
Vengan para acá, hombre.
Okay. Yeah.
No matter what you say about it,
Here's the story. Mr. Meneses. Okay. We have a crew in there, they're not shooting.
We could go in there so we can
Okay.
see it. And then you go there and see if we can
Yeah,
get
okay.
along.
All right, okay.
Buenas tardes.
Okay.
Ponerlo más cómodo. Yo le digo a él, yo creía porque le vino.
Yeah,
Never
yeah.
mind, but I don't care really. Yeah. Bueno, Nicaragua solo hablo de este prosquito, que él me dice que Nicaragua no le importa. A mí no me importa que no lo pongan, pero es como había preparado el comunicado. Todos los cargos que se respecto al proceso que se me abrió en Nicaragua, pronto verificarán ustedes esa inocencia con la reestructuración que se acaba de hacer en la cúpula del Poder Judicial, donde no dudo que por la idoneidad y sólida prestigio de los magistrados se me hará un fallo distinto y apegado a derecho. No obstante, he renacido, estas son las cosas que a mí me interesan, estas cosas son las que a mí me interesan.
Well, then how about, were you an official of the Contra? Did you work for the Contras?
No, well, I helped them, but I don't really work for them.
Yeah, yeah. Did you play a role? Were you an official?
No at all.
Okay, so you were not the intelligence and security chief in Los Angeles. Okay, all right, that's what I want to find out. You did sell drugs. I mean, that's...
If I sell drugs.
No, you did sell drugs. You were a drug dealer.
No, no.
Never?
No.
Never, ever.
Never.
Okay. I mean, everything's...
I know, but nobody proved me nothing yet.
No, but weren't you quoted at one time as saying that you...
En los Estados Unidos, dígale esto, lo que dije aquí, que en los Estados Unidos casualmente nunca me presentaron cargos hasta el día de hoy.
That there were, in the United States, there were never any charges against him up to now.
Tiraron.
They withdrew the charges.
You know that, don't you?
The indictment, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Ha hablado con Jaime. You want to call the principal, sí. Él me preguntaba anteriormente de la diferencia de vida, del mundo, de la alegría, pero yo le digo que yo estoy más en paz y más tranquilo aquí que afuera, por lo que he tratado de ser hombre nuevo en nuestro Señor Jesucristo, dígale.
You were asking him about his life outside and now here. He said that he's more peaceful here now because he's out there in the gallery.
About 45 in each, and we're about most of the gallerias with 200 persons. We're about
Yeah, all right.
outside they don't want it.
Oh yeah, all right.
You
Okay.
can do it in my galleria.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We can just go. Okay. He doesn't want just as we go, and then you'll shut us. Okay.
Okay.
As soon as we get beyond it, let's follow the guard here.
Aquí es donde dicen que no.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Marcelo.
Just is he the guy or?
Sí.
Okay. Don't get into the camera range. Okay. Can we shoot here? Okay. Just ask right here.
Que me
Walk in.
dijeron la teniente que
Just a little bit.
procuraran evitar la cámara aquí, que adentro lo podían hacer, que lo haga. Let's do it here,
Just
a little
us.
bit here, and then from there, then
Yeah.
no, that's
Okay,
that's
okay.
what they told me.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
care
Yeah, it's
myself.
okay. Okay.
I don't care really,
All right.
you know.
So where is your?
It's kind of far away from here.
Okay. So we're gonna walk there.
Yeah,
What's
we
this?
got plenty time to shoot inside.
Yeah. Okay.
No problem.
All right. Okay.
So it's better you stop here now, so
All
because
right.
I don't want
Let us
you-
just walk by the camera then. Okay. So.
But I know because
What's
I don't
that?
want you to
Okay.
be I don't want you guys to be in trouble. I know how they are. We got plenty time inside.
Okay.
Don't
All right.
worry about it.
Let's camera range.
It's all
there,
broke.
okay.
That's because
So you always stay with the cameraman behind him. Okay, Marcel?
see the ceiling all broke. That's
understand.
why they don't want it.
They're not going to see that. Anyway.
I know, but
Interested
I
in
don't.
you.
I don't care really.
You get along with them?
Yeah, see, from here you can do it.
Okay,
No problem.
all right.
That's
So
what the captain
Just
said.
describe, this is, what is this called? here?
Just calling gallerias here. See.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we can just walk.
We got the right side.
Okay.
Fe. Here.
This is home?
Yeah, that's my home, my sweet home.
What? I thought I heard.
Huh? you got your job done, man. You got your job done, I said.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that very, very much. Do they move you around here a lot or not?
No, like before they used to, not anymore.
Okay. Gracias.
Like I say, this one looks really clean.
Yeah.
Because we painted.
Yeah. How many people are in this cell block?
There are 2 in each. What kind of people are in here?
Yeah. What
They're
are they in for?
military, most of them. Ex-military. They make anything, they put it in here. They're people from the army.
What are they accused of?
Pardon me?
What were they accused of? What kind of
like
offenses?
traffics, like car accidents and things like that.
Beating up people?
Right.
Yeah.
Some, how do you call them, drunks? You get drunks?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Is this where you were first taken after you were found guilty?
No, I were too young. See, that's my celda.
This one, you got a corner room. Corner rooms are the best on the cell block.
Hacer un volado, Medina, para no entrar ahí a ver si está rico, que me preste la llave. Por favor, Medina.
I was, that's not true?
Huh? See, I leave my kid. I leave my kid to someone. But he's anda en Sol. You can get a picture.
So do you have freedom of movement here, or do you have to always be with a guard? Thousands of thousands of guys. I spent a little time in a Cuban prison. I was a kid reporter, arrested a couple of days. Well, when you're young, it was scary. It was just a little, a lot of security.
Yes.
Home sweet home.
See, like I said, see what my toilet is?
Yeah.
That's.
So the stories were wrong. You're not living.
You cannot shower. I just get a bucket of water and I take a shower here myself.
It's quite different from what you were used to on the outside.
The hell out of it. See, I can get that shower.
Well, we're going to leave you.
You want to see the church there? So you call them the...
Okay. Go ahead. Lead the way.
That's our church. We get together about after 5 o'clock. About.
And you, there is a priest who is here all the time.
Every Saturday.
Yeah.
After.
You heard a voice?
No.
Just
but I feel it.
Yeah. What brought that about? Fear?
Pardon me?
Fear?
I don't understand you.
Does bring about his conversion?
Que sí, fue el temor, el
Fear of the
que
future?
usted buscara la Biblia o el temor al futuro.
Excuse me, were we able to hear the cell opening, and were you able to hear the cell opening? You could hear that. Okay, yeah. So this is another?
Kids are 15 to 18 years old.
Not a great way to spend your childhood, is it?
Yeah. What? That's it.
That's it, okay. I'll walk you in and then we'll say...
Yeah, well, I'll stay here myself. I have to go in. I don't want to walk there anymore.
Pardon?
I don't want to walk in there anymore.
No,
So.
in there? No? You're going to stay here?
Yeah, I want to stay here.
Okay.
No, yeah, no.
We are going.
Well,
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Newspaper says he has a private cell, a big place with private guards and a TV set. I think that's why he doesn't want to go in there.
Nos vemos. Gracias. Hasta luego.
Good luck.
Ella.
Let me walk out here. Why don't I just walk? I'll reach up the other end. Okay. You want to do that, or you want to just take some pictures? What do you do? To talk to Norwin Meneses, you have to come here to the National Penitentiary in Tipitapa, Nicaragua, just outside Managua. To talk with Norwin Meneses, you have to come here to the Tipitapa Penitentiary near Managua, Nicaragua.
Yo soy Menenses.
To talk with Norwin Meneses, you have to come here to the Tipitapa Penitentiary near Managua, Nicaragua. To talk with Norwin Meneses, you have to come here to the Tipitapa Penitentiary near Managua, Nicaragua. To talk with Norwin Meneses, you have to come here to the Tipitapa Penitentiary near Managua, Nicaragua.
Salieron algunos ayer aquí. No perdí. No sé, solo que andan adentro, pero no sé a dónde. Deben estar en el tren a las 3:30 de la visita. A ver, ya. Una botona. Con blanca. ¿Cuál es la hora de salida a los periodistas de ABC? A las 15:30.
We always run into it. So this is one of those kind of things we both run into each other. Everything's still on as planned?
Yes.
So what do you expect to come out of this one?
Well, this is just going to be the first step
as we hear what his assessment is of the situation. We have certainly a number of questions to ask, and this is just the beginning. We don't expect this to be anything but the first step.
As far as what kinds of information can he give you now? He's already denied that the CIA has been involved. Is that like denying it before the investigation is beginning, or?
Well, we will ask him to take another look, and perhaps there may be some information that was overlooked. We just think that this is a very serious allegation. There's we've got more specifics than at this time. But we have a committee that's working very hard on the matter, and we will be asking for perhaps some independence. We find it's difficult sometimes to investigate yourself, so it may be necessary to have some outside counsel or commission to deal with that.
Will you insist on a formal congressional investigation?
We've already asked for that, and we hope that it's going to be very difficult because adjournment is near. But we will certainly press for a formal hearing. We're talking about forming a special commission. We're talking about special counsel. But we will sort them out, and we will aggressively pursue those matters.
Have you had any communication with the White House?
We are definitely communicating with the White House also. As you know, General McCaffrey has already agreed that there should be an investigation. We'll be meeting with him in a day or so. So we are just going to do an in-depth study on all of the aspects, all of the facets, and we expect to have some conclusions.
Was McCaffrey talking about more than what the CIA is doing with the Inspector General? Do you know any specifics about what he said Saturday?
No, we will be meeting with him in the next day or so. We'll get clarification on those issues. He's going to be here in a minute, so I think that we ought to open
Thank you for the courtesy. You know my Deputy George Kennedy. All right.
All right.
Mr. George.
You got it.
Mr. George, did you know anything about these Nicaraguan drug dealers trafficking drugs in the United States for the Iran Contras?
What kind of answers are you hoping to get out of this meeting?
I don't know what we're going to get. The fact is that I've had now somewhere around 1,500 calls from people in the Baltimore area, and they're very concerned. Last Friday, we had about 1,000 people who came over here for the Congressional Black Caucus hearing, and they just want answers. And I think people are not rushing to judgment, but they do want some clarity. They want to make sure that some of the allegations that have been made are not accurate. And I think that what the caucus is looking for, you know, I say this as a lawyer who's practiced for 20 years. I know there's two sides to every story. But I think basically what the caucus is looking for is just trying to determine if the allegations are true. If they aren't true, they want to make sure that that's known too. Because I think it's some very strong allegations that have been made.
What are the key allegations that concern you?
Just the idea that the government may have been involved in financing drug trade in our cities. And like I said, my only question is and I'm here for my constituents. They are very concerned. I haven't, since I've been here, since I've been in government, I haven't gotten that many people that are concerned. And I think what it is, the reason why there's so much concern is because people see their children dying and they see their families suffering, and they want to make sure that, and a lot of people are doing a lot to make sure that the streets are rid of drugs, and I think we just have some questions. I don't know what's going to happen here.
Thank you very much. I said there was already an investigation.
I think we got Maxine's coming.
Is that Maxine?
Congressman Connors, Tom Patterson with CNN. What do you intend to ask the director?
Oh, I can't tell you ahead of time, but I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to get a response from the director. He's written to us, and he's going to talk to us face to face, and we'll just have an opportunity to open up some dialogue.
The drug czar said there was already an investigation and they found no wrongdoing. How do you respond to that?
I have not heard that response from the drug czar, and I think it remains for me to talk with him and to find out exactly what he's saying.
What do you see as the unanswered question in this whole ordeal at this point?
Everything is unanswered at this point by anybody. The allegations, the charges are made. The San Jose Mercury News documented names, places, and now it's up to those who are being charged to give us some answers, and I have to go in and I'll talk with you when I come out. Thank you.
Probably 244. Say
How would you describe the meeting?
very secret.
Anything?
Being director is a hard job. Lots of things
Dr. Joey, what are you just telling the members about what the CIA is going to do on this situation?
I don't really have any comment. I've just been speaking with members of Congress.
Would you characterize it as a productive meeting?
But the chairman.
This is just for a sweep. If there are any statements, they could be made outside. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I promised you I'd do this again.
Comments?
Where's the chairman? What are the questions?
Your perception of the meeting at this point?
Yeah. Let me just open up, and then we can have any member that wants to jump in. We, as you know, we just completed a meeting with the CIA director. As a matter of fact, before we could, he was very anxious to meet with us, and so mutually we were able to come together quickly. We think that this was a good beginning. We feel that his willingness and his openness seems to be moving in the right direction. Of course, this is just the first step. We will now sit down with our committee to discuss where we go from here. But the director is willing to cooperate. He's going to ask for an Inspector General to come in and conduct an investigation. And so that's where it stands right now. If you have any questions.
So his posture hasn't
Yes.
changed then? I mean, he's been saying that all along, right? That he'd have an Inspector General
This is a
look at it?
follow-up to the letter that he had sent to many of us that indicated he had done a preliminary inquiry. We found out what that meant, that he had read some old files, and he's turned it over to the Inspector General because he believes that that is the way to get an independent investigation going. He vowed to cooperate with us with any committees that will be holding hearings, and Congressman Dixon, who's on the Intelligence Committee, will further expound about that possibility. He indicated he would be available or set some mechanism in motion that would keep us updated as the investigation proceeds. And he got all of the input, and we raised questions, and we've had a very good beginning. And let me remind you, We're in this for the long haul, and this is just a beginning. We're going in a number of directions. This is not the only thing that we're doing, but we're pleased that at least we're underway with the CIA's office and the Inspector General.
Did you share with him the anxiety that this issue has in the African American community?
Yes, there is an independent investigation. The Inspector General is independent of the CIA and will be doing an independent investigation.
Did you share with him?
Did George say that he would open up his records for the Inspector General at all levels?
He said he would cooperate in every way with this investigation.
Did you share with him the anxieties that this issue has with African Americans around the country?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we explained to him not only the outpouring that has taken place, the calls that we are getting, the outrage in the community, and not just one community of South Central Los Angeles, but all over the country. And he said he understood it, he feels it, he understands what's going on, and he understands the outrage.
What is the worst case scenario in your view for the CIA? What is the worst case outcome for this in terms of what the investigation might show?
We're not going to anticipate any worst case outcome. What we're going to do is enter into this with optimism. We are determined, we're going to be persistent. Again, we're in for the long haul, and we expect cooperation from everybody. So we expect to get what a good independent investigation will reap, and we're not starting off with any negative attitude that somehow we're not going to get anything.
Initially, Mr. Deutsch declared that, well, he said the allegations were unfounded. He spoke prematurely. How do you view, now he seems to be open, willing to work, in your words, how do you, what brought about this change, you think?
Well,
I don't think there was really a change. I think that the director has expressed to us through correspondence and personally that the preliminary investigation that he had started had not shown any evidence that the CIA was involved. Obviously, no one is satisfied with that, including him, and that is the reason he directed the Inspector General to make a full and fair investigation. I think he made it clear to all of us that not only a full and fair investigation is important, but the credibility of that investigation to a large part depends on members of Congress believing and having faith in that investigation, and we talked about that.
Sorry, Mr. Payne, how do you clarify to the African American community that the CIA is on the level? Because as you know, the CIA has been very suspect in the African American community.
Well, you must have heard my last statement to the director. We have a job to do. I think it's incumbent upon the director to have a fair, open, transparent investigation. We said that there has been a history of CIA throughout the years, whether it was overseas in Africa, or whether it was here in this country, of not being a friend of the African American community. And there, even as recently as in Haiti with the FRAP organization funded by the CIA, turned our ship around that was going there to do some work. And so there is a tremendous amount of distrust. We are expecting, he seems to have the spirit that I've never seen before in a CIA director. He seems to want to see us get to the bottom of this. He said he was teaching school when this was happening, so he has nothing to hide. And he's also indicated that there have been other instances of cases of the CIA since he's been the director that he has launched an investigation and have taken very serious action in several cases in Paris and other cases within the CIA. So we believe that he wants to see the bottom of this come out.
One of the questions that I asked him was to be sure that the investigation would not be narrow. I represent Texas, Houston, and the concern is that it not be limited to what we already know. That if there is violations that may carry us to Harlem, to Fifth Ward in Houston, Texas, to Detroit, Michigan, to Miami, Florida, urban centers around the nation where sizable black populations are, then we don't want to leave any stone unturned, and we're willing to extend to him a hand of confidence for him to go forward as expressed to us this afternoon.
Our job is not to go out and try to make the black community believe that this investigation is going to be fair and that we are confident that it's going to be fair. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. It is up to the Inspector General and the CIA to come back with the kind of credible information that will make the black community believe that they have done a good job. So it's up to them to prove that they can do a good job and be fair.
Congresswoman Waters,
yes.
You had a meeting with Speaker Gingrich yesterday. He canceled it. Why did he cancel it, and what kind of indication do you have from him about the cooperation?
His communication to me today was that he had wanted me to brief him, but he had in fact already moved beyond that point, that he had digested the information, that he had met with Mr. Combes and those on the Intelligence Committee. He had already instructed Mr. Combes to move forward with an investigation. And I have a copy of that letter in my office.
Did he would be completely cooperative with regards to hearings?
No, he didn't say that. The letter didn't go that far. I guess we can ask that question of him. And I have the letter in the office. You can have a copy of that. Thank you.
Has the White House said anything on this, Mr.
Your opinion of the meeting?
Well, I thought it was a fair and open meeting. I thought that the CIA director came with an open mind and with the intent of really getting down to the bottom of this allegation. I would like to say that if, in fact, the results of the Inspector General's investigation does not prove satisfactory to us, we will perhaps seek an independent type of investigation. So that may not be the last investigation that we'll see.
What do you tell people in Compton, which I know is part of the district you represent now? What specifically would you tell them based on this meeting today?
I would tell them to continue to have hope, be encouraged that we do have a CIA director who's willing to get to the bottom of this situation and to really come out with some type of resolve. I will also tell them that we must go beyond this, as we are beginning to do, to look at what will be the remedies to bring to our communities that's been destroyed by this crack cocaine. And so they have begun to know that if the investigation does not come out with anything that they feel or deem positive, we will seek the independent investigation, and then we will seek remedies for some type of redress.
Can you just explain what exactly is being alleged and what is...
People who were on the payroll of the CIA introduced cocaine into the community, needed a way to move it quickly, found that by using a crack kind of a solution, it could be moved quickly, it could move fast, it could be moved without too much attention, and that this was a way of quick money to come in, and that's what that's what the allegations say. And there are people that we know that were on the CIA payroll at that time, and it's no secret that the Iran-Contra affair, that the government admitted that they were using cocaine for cash.
And that black communities, African American communities, were the focus of some of this activity?
For the crack activity, that became the focus for quick moving and low cost, and so it was evidently decided somewhere that this would be a new way to move it.
Has Senator Kerry, who,
as you know, it just broke in the last week or so. We had our annual legislative conference where we were busy. It just happened to come at that time. So we will not only be doing that, we will be having weekly, I don't know what the intervals will be, but we will be kept up to date as this investigation goes on. We might even ask to have some law enforcement people monitor this from the African American community, someone that has credibility in it, to be sure to be able to analyze what's going on. We brought up some specific things, we brought up some specific names, we brought up some specific projects, and he is going to look into them.
Did you want to echo about the Senator Kerry issue?
Only that, Senator Boxer and Senator Feinstein have both asked for this investigation, and I'm sure that they will bring in their colleagues who will help us to try to get down to the bottom of this. So I would encourage our chairman to seek the support of Senator Kerry and to seek the support of Boxer and Feinstein in this effort.
Rep. Payne, has the White House said anything about this as far?
We have not been directly in touch with the President's office. We have, though, I have talked to the drug czar, who, as you know, works directly with the administration. We will be meeting with him next week, and we will be getting, as you know, he's asked for an investigation also and supports our call for an investigation. And so we're going to be engaged through our General McCaffrey from the White House's point of view.
Mr. Chairman, may I also add that there will be a field hearing in my district, the district that's been affected by this drug outcry, this drug trafficking.
Mr. Payne will bring in the CBC along with some of the members of the Select Committee on Intelligence to come in and talk with the community to try to ease the pain and the tension that they have so severely been affected by this outcry and this report. So we will be doing that on October 19th.
The 19th? Okay.
Yes.
As far as what he said about the black community being suspicious of the CIA, I would even go further in saying that they really don't trust the CIA and the FBI. Was that communicated to Mr. the Director? Was he aware of that?
He wasn't born yesterday.
But it was reiterated. Yes.
Yeah, very strongly. Okay, thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congressman, can you describe a little bit the reaction?
support the chairman's decision to clear this room if we continue to get interruptions. It does not work for us. You heard my opening statement. We're not trying to cover up anything. Mr. Chairman, well,
may I have an opportunity
Mr.
to
Blum.
respond?
My judgment is that we ought to proceed. There's a lot of public interest in this matter. We want people to be present. We can't identify who's saying what. We're not going to get into any investigations. We just ask for your cooperation in allowing us to proceed with the questions without a response to the extent that you can.
I would like to try to answer that as best I can. When people who are engaged in an operation say, we're going to look the other way, we're not going to do anything, interfere in the law enforcement process to protect people who are running the operation, and in that process of interference permit drugs to flow in, you have an extraordinarily serious problem. Now, the DEA, when it has
Mr. Blum, let me get you back to the question I asked you. Right. I don't disagree with your statement. If you listen to the audience listening, who keeps interrupting with their enthusiastic support of what you said earlier, I do think it is a terrible mistake to say that we're going to allow drug trafficking to destroy American citizens as a consequence of believing that the Contra effort was a higher priority. I ask you a question. The question is this. Do you, in your own mind, have a situation, obviously you were at best lukewarm to the Contra effort, do you see in your own mind risks to the people of this country that would carry with it a high enough priority that in that circumstance you believe that it would not be wise to bring the evidence out and pursue a prosecution in that case?
In the rarest...
Let me give you an example. How about nuclear proliferation? How about a covert operation
Senator,
that's designed to interrupt and to prevent the flow of chemical and biological agents into the United States? In that situation, Mr. Blum, in that situation, Mr. Blum, what is your view if the people that are involved in that uncover evidence that might lead to a prosecution? Should they shut down the operation?
I understand that, and there are circumstances where I would agree that you would shut down a prosecution, but you don't do it the question isn't, is there a bright line and can we draw a bright line? Right. There was a judgment call here, and that judgment call erred so far on the wrong side of where judgment should have been that we wound up with a terrible problem. And that terrible problem was a de facto result that I was describing. That is, where many people did suffer as a consequence. And I started to say, when DEA allows a controlled delivery of drugs, there is a furious debate. Those controlled deliveries are monitored because DEA says our job is to prevent it from coming in. And if it escapes on the street for any reason, we've blown it. And that kind of standard is really the kind of standard that should have, I think, been applied here. And maybe you can give me, and maybe we would both agree, that there is some dreadful circumstance where this should have occurred and been allowed to occur and so on. And I probably could be convinced in the right set of circumstances. But the problem was that that issue wasn't put that way, and the sensitivity to what was going on was simply missing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Senator Kerry. Senator Robb.
Mr. Chairman, I think that I will defer any questioning at this point. I think the challenge to the committee has been sufficiently articulated, and I think the sensitivity and volatility of the concerns are such that it would be appropriate to have the two inspectors general complete their work before, at least as far as my own participation is concerned. It is the matters that are under discussion are extremely serious, and I think they deserve as factual an investigation as we can provide, and I'm not sure that attempting to come to conclusions at this point would advance the cause that I know that the Chairman and the Vice Chairman seek in holding these particular hearings. I would ask a procedural question, perhaps, to Mr. Bloom, and that is whether or not you believe that the authority of the Inspectors General is sufficient to provide the kind of answers and the kind of objectivity that your concerns have addressed to whatever conclusions this committee might draw from those reports.
I think that the authority is sufficient as far as the behavior of people who are employees of the specific agency in question, the Justice Department or the CIA. The rest of the question, which is at the political level, at the NSC, and the policy decisions taken, will undoubtedly wind up in that realm of executive privilege and top secrecy. And therein lies the very great difficulty in expecting the Inspectors General to solve the problem. I think we can find out whether CIA employees followed the rules. I don't think that the Inspector General can tell you all about what Ollie North did and didn't do, or what was going on in that circle of people and who they brought in and what they told people to do. And we know enough now to know that many people played out of channels and did things out of channels or didn't necessarily report them. So I have a sense you can get a good part of the way. I'm not at all sure you can get all of the way.
Mr. Chairman, I think that I will persist in withholding at this point. I do have a couple of articles that I was going to use as the basis for questions that I would like to simply provide to the those who are going to conduct the investigations to consider as a part of any other information they may bring to bear on their investigations. And I will await a formal completion of their activities. I know that they haven't had an opportunity to speak formally yet, but some indication of when they believe that their reports would be available would be useful, at least to me, in terms of figuring out what kind of time frame we're talking about getting the kinds of facts that would hopefully address and perhaps put to rest some of the questions that have been raised.
Senator Robb, we will address that time frame. Thank you. What they expect to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Robb. Mr. Blum, just a few more questions. Coming back to the end point of my inquiries as to covert actions, and you gave the one illustration as to KLM, and I think it is obvious that there are covert activities which are known beyond the realm of secrecy, but your critique is very forceful, and it may well be that the Congress ought to make some different conclusions as to covert activities. So that's why I was asking you the basis for your statement that there are too many covert activities. As a generalization, the covert activities are only known to the oversight committees. The covert activities are undertaken after a finding by the President, so people in the executive branch know, and we have some oversight. And it is true that sometimes covert activities are disclosed in the public media, but it is a relatively rare occurrence considering how many there are. So that's why I asked you the question, to what extent do you know of the covert activities to come to a judgment that there are too many and they're too far-fetched?
Maybe what I should be doing is paying much more careful attention to language. I understand that in defining a covert activity, you have a very specific definition in mind. The question may turn more on relationships and ongoing arrangements than specific presidentially authorized covert activities. So on the question of protecting our friends in different places, whether they've been engaged in human rights violations or in drug trafficking violations, there may not be a covert activity as defined by law, as authorized by the President, but there may be ongoing relationships. This may be a definitional question. I may be saying something different than what you mean. I can't tell you, though, that I know, and I don't want to deceive you. I don't know what has gone on in the executive branch in secret. I have not been privy to the findings, and I don't want to mislead you.
Well, it is a different matter as to whether there are human rights violations which are are not being pursued. And this committee has been very diligent in our pursuit, for example, of what goes on in Guatemala.
And the committee is to be
and
commended
behind
for.
closed doors. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
And the committee is to be commended for.
I wanted you to repeat that.
That's quite all right.
You had made a comment about things that were taught to people that were hard to erase from their minds, and one of them was to teach people how to assassinate other people. Do you have any evidentiary basis for a conclusion that the United States is seeking to assassinate someone contrary to existing U.S. policy?
Certainly not currently, but I refer you back to the Church Committee investigation.
Well, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, I know you are. So
that goes back
but that's
into
the
70s.
historical base from which I'm talking. I'm not talking about currently. That was specifically prohibited, and that problem was addressed.
Mr. Blum, in the course of the report which was filed by the Subcommittee on Terrorism, Narcotics, and International Operations, what is the most explicit statement, if you can give it to us, on a finding that U.S. intelligence forces were permitting people working for them to engage in drug activities?
I think I have to let the language of the report speak for itself, and I'll say why. That report went through so many editorial changes that even after reading it, I can't remember which version got to where. The report does speak for itself. The problem that we saw, and we could definitely speak to, and I know the report speaks to it, is the problem of standing by when you knew that people were doing the were in the drug business when you were an employee of the government.
Well, that's a very serious matter.
Very tough problem.
Very serious matter. Are you suggesting that it was stated more explicitly but was cut out in the editorial process?
No, I think we were pretty, I think it is there, that we believed that the government, that is the CIA, was aware of this problem, was aware of trafficking by people. And I think we said that. I don't think that that's something that was edited out. I don't, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
With respect to the question of what policymakers have done, do you have an evidentiary base for concluding that the policymakers were aware that the intelligence operatives were allowing drugs to be disseminated?
Certainly in the case of General Noriega. There was no question about that.
Beyond General Noriega?
My guess is, and it's a guess, but I think a very educated guess, that in the case of Honduras, yes. In the case of Haiti, yes. They knew. They knew there was a problem.
How about with specific reference to the distribution of drugs, say, in Los Angeles?
I don't think they were ever given the clean understanding of the full implications of what was going on.
The policymakers were not.
That's right.
With respect to Colonel North, and there you raise very, very serious questions. And the Congress had said there'd be no more support for the Contras. I voted with the majority on that, opposed to supporting the Contras. There was a select committee which investigated that matter. The investigation was started by the Intelligence Committee when I was on it at an early stage, and it was my hope that the Intelligence Committee would have pursued that, but a select committee took over. And you had access to challenge the refusal of the executive branch to turn over information to you. Let me tell you this, Mr. Blum, that's going on today. Senator Kerry and I are fighting with many of the departments of the executive branch about not disclosing materials to us. And it is an extraordinarily laborious process, and I believe that started in George Washington's day. It didn't, it's been going on a long time, and it is very frustrating and I think very damaging to the country that we do not have access to materials. The Select Committee with Senator Inouye, an outstanding chairman, You had your own committee. You did not lack for political power to pursue the committee's investigation and to pursue, in a judicial context, to find out more about Colonel North. Why wasn't it done? Is there really something there that should have been done that wasn't done?
We did try to do it, but the committee was for a one-term, 2-year mandate, and the mandate of the committee expired at the point.
Did you seek a supplemental mandate?
Senator Kerry did, and it was turned down.
Do you think the Select Committee was derelict in not pursuing North further?
I think that North should have been pursued further, that the diaries should never have been accepted in an expurgated form, that they should never have remained classified to the degree they did. And some of the things that happened with the classification of those diaries was bizarre. Once, when they were declassified in part by the Select Committee, some passages were declassified, others kept secret. Then, in the Freedom of Information suit, they were put through the classification process a second time, and the second time, some of the things that had been released before were classified, and some of the things that were secret before were made public. And that undermined any confidence at all in the process that went on. You have 2 sets of those diaries with different classifications.
Senator Kerry?
I have no follow-on questions, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Robb?
I have no questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Blum. We'd appreciate it if you have the time, if you would stay, because
Certainly.
there may be some issues which will arise during the course of the testimony from Mr. Hitz and Mr. Bromwich we'd like to have your information on. We now turn to Mr. Fred Hitz, who is the Inspector General for the Central Intelligence Agency. Welcome, Mr. Hitz. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know, is this microphone on?
It is.
In the letter that you sent on October 18, inviting me to appear, you asked that to the extent possible in an open hearing, you would like to hear from me about the nature of the allegations, the scope of our investigation, and the results of any previous investigations or reviews conducted by the CIA that may be relevant. Now, you, sir, have sketched the allegations in the San Jose Mercury, and I don't think I need to repeat those at this time. But I will, if you would permit me, go through how we got involved in this, the direction from DCI Deutsch. And
that would be fine, Mr. Hitz. We would appreciate that.
On 3 September, after the appearance of the Mercury articles, DCI Deutsch wrote to me that he had, quote, no reason to believe that there is any substance to the allegations published in the Mercury News, end quote. However, he requested that I initiate an immediate inquiry into the matter because of the seriousness of the allegations and the need to resolve definitively any questions in this area. At that time, DCI Deutsch also requested that I submit a report to him within 60 days containing our findings and conclusions. In 4 September letters to several members of Congress, this committee and its counterpart in the House of Representatives, DCI Deutsch explained his decision to request an Inspector General investigation. He also stated that a review of agency files, quote, including a study conducted in 1988 and briefed to both the intelligence committees, supports the conclusion that the agency neither participated in nor condoned drug trafficking by Contra forces, end quote. Further, according to the DCI, the agency never had any relationship with the 2 individuals alleged by the Mercury News to have funneled drug trafficking profits to the Contras. Also, the DCI stated that the agency had never sought to have information concerning these individuals withheld in a drug-related prosecution of a 3rd individual as alleged in the Mercury News. We also, as an office, recognized the seriousness of these allegations, and accordingly we reacted quickly to the DCI's request by organizing an initial team of 3 investigators, an auditor, a research assistant, and a secretary to conduct a preliminary review of the scope and nature of the issues involved. That team developed, and I transmitted to all agency components a 12 September 1996 request for comprehensive searches of all agency record systems regarding a broad range of relevant subjects. The request also called for the components to designate specific personnel who would be individually responsible for certifying to the thoroughness of those searches. We also published a bulletin to all agency employees explaining the nature of our investigation and asking that they provide us with any relevant information in their possession. The search request extended to any and all documents and information, regardless of its form or sensitivity, relating to, number one, any CIA connection with a number of specific individuals. 2, any possible drug trafficking and related activities by the Contras or associated persons. 3, what action CIA took in response to such information. And 4, any contacts with federal, state, local, or foreign law enforcement entities in regard to these individuals and activities. Because of the DCI's request for a report within 60 days, we established a deadline of 18 September for the components to provide our office with copies of all responsive documents and information. It has since become apparent that there is absolutely no chance we will be able to meet anything like a 60-day deadline. The size of the information base that must be thoroughly reviewed by the agency components in order to respond to our documents, to our request, is enormous. For example, our team has reviewed over 5,000 cables that were identified in our own preliminary and limited electronic search of the agency's cable database. We have just received our first several hundred documents from the Directorate of Operations in response to our request, and have been advised that 5,000 to 10,000 electronic records are in the final stages of review for relevance to our tasking, while over 350 boxes of files have been recalled from agency archives and must be manually searched for responsive records. Additional searches are underway in the Directorates of Administration and Intelligence, the Offices of Congressional Affairs, and the General Counsel, which have provided only very limited responses so far. We have been told that a search of the same records base in the 1980s, at the request of the Iran-Contra Independent Counsel, took 2 years and the efforts of 50 to 60 agency personnel. We are not saying that our investigation will take 2 years. We're stating merely that we have a lot of ground to cover.
Mr. Hitz, what are you saying as to how long it will take?
I understand, Mr. Chairman, that you're going to seek a precise answer to that question.
No, I already have.
I can't give you one. But let me just sketch a bit what we're about, and perhaps we can return to that. While we are attempting to tailor our request as much as possible, the bulk of the information that is responsive to our request will not even be received by my office for at least 2 weeks. Thus, we remain in the preliminary stages of our investigation. Soon we will face the requirement to review, catalog, and digest substantial amounts of information in order to move into the interviewing phase. In anticipation of this requirement, we have assigned 3 additional investigators, an independent contractor, and another research assistant to our team. Another auditor and 2 inspectors will be joining the team shortly as well.
Well, how many people do you have in total then working on it?
We're going to have 6 plus 3 plus 2, so 11 at this time.
Is that enough?
I'm not sure, sir. I'm not sure. I think we always have the problem, and you've been through these investigations yourself, too many cooks spoil the broth if you haven't got something for them to do initially. But we are prepared to put the resources on this matter that are required to do as expeditious a job as we can.
Well, Mr. Hitz, I just suggest, and you're an experienced investigator, that you have to make a determination as to how many people you need and get them at an early stage. It sounds to me as if you have quite a task ahead of you, and that it ought to be done as promptly as possible, which is a customary phrase, but there's a lot of concern here. And there's a question about our deferring to you and to the Justice Department IG. And if we're to do that, we have to have some pretty precise idea as to when it's going to be completed and the resources available to it.
I appreciate your concern, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to try to refine, if I can, our time frame, but I can assure you that we will devote whatever resources can profitably be expended on this matter.
Okay.
And I'm also happy to report that we've had preliminary discussions and are looking forward to working closely with Mike Bromwich, the Justice Department Inspector General, who's here, and his staff, since it's obvious that there will be several areas where our investigative interests and jurisdiction will overlap and complement each other. While we do not have much substantive insight at this point, I can describe what we have learned from the limited documentation provided to us thus far regarding the agency's position when similar questions were raised in the late 1980s. We are not vouching for the accuracy of these statements at this point, but are describing for the committee their contents. According to these records, in early 1987, the State Department requested that the agency review all available information relating to the possible involvement of the Contras in drug trafficking. The 21 January 1987 paper that resulted was described as coordinated throughout the intelligence community and with DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. It began, and I'm quoting from that paper, "Review of information available to the intelligence community gives no indication that anti-Sandinista groups that have received or now are receiving support from the U.S. government have engaged in drug trafficking to fund their operations. Some allegations of Contra involvement in drug trafficking have surfaced over the past few years. DEA and FBI officials, along with intelligence community leaders, however, say no credible information exists to support such allegations." That's from the paper. The paper went on to discuss allegations.
Mr. Hicks, you say in early 87, and then the paper was produced 21 January 87. That's pretty early as well. I mean, when was the request made? How much time did it take them to produce this report?
I'm not sure. Do we know? The initial request, Senator Kerry, was 9 January.
So on 9 January, State Department requests the agency review all available information relating to the possible involvement of the Contras in drug trafficking. 12 days later, a response is given, and you're telling us that you can't get your work done in 60 days or 50 days? And, I mean, does that cause you to reach some conclusion about the report that was produced in 12 days?
It might, sir. We're going to have to determine what documents they reviewed, and I take your point. The paper went on to discuss allegations regarding certain individuals that had been received and acted upon by the agency. Just over a year later, on 28 March 1988, then Deputy DCI Robert Gates sent a memorandum to the agency's Deputy Directors for Intelligence and for Operations asking for a briefing concerning, quote, Contra involvement in narcotics-related activities to include any pilots involved in the resupply effort who may have had past or current ties to narcotics-related activities, end quote. He indicated in this memorandum that he wanted to be, quote, fully informed on the facts because so many questions and allegations were being raised about these subjects. The memorandum also suggested that, quote, there may be some merit in setting all of this down on paper for the record, perhaps to be provided to both the President's Intelligence Oversight Board and to the oversight committees of the Congress, end quote. According to the memorandum, the briefing was to include specifics and comprehensiveness. This request appears to have produced at least 2 written responses. One is an undated and unsigned paper entitled, quote, Allegations of Resistance Activities in Narcotics Trafficking, end quote. It begins by stating, and I'm quoting from the paper, all allegations implying that the CIA condoned, abetted, or participated in narcotics trafficking are absolutely false. The agency constantly checks for any evidence of drug smuggling by Nicaraguan resistance members, and any person or entity found to be involved in such activity must be separated from the resistance. In addition, the agency has consistently informed the Congressional Oversight Committees of any resistance drug activities in briefings and in written responses. The paper then goes on, that's the end of my quote from the paper. The paper then goes on to describe a variety of allegations as to specific individuals and how the agency responded to each. The second apparent response is a 31 March 1988 memorandum to DDCI Gates entitled, quote, "Pilots, airplanes, and shipping companies used in the resupply efforts that may have had past or current ties to narcotics-related activities," end quote. This memorandum was prepared by the Central America Task Force, which was responsible for managing the agency's program in support of the Contras. It begins as follows, and I'm quoting again from the memorandum. "During the past several years, there have been numerous allegations in the media that pilots and airline companies that the agency has used in the resupply efforts of the democratic resistance have been involved in narcotics activities. To our knowledge, no pilot or crew members have engaged in illegal narcotics activities while working for the agency. As per your instructions a year ago, and because of agency concerns about drug activities, the agency has been extremely careful to properly vet all pilots, mechanics, and companies involved in transporting equipment for the Nicaragua program. The agency runs internal traces on these individuals and companies, and in addition routinely queries DEA, FBI, and Customs, and in some cases, such as shipping companies, the U.S. Coast Guard. If no derogatory information is found, a conditional approval is submitted. If some derogatory information is found or alleged, but the various agencies do not believe it would be a problem for the U.S. government to have a contract with the individual or company, a special approval is required, which is signed by the chief of the division." That's the end of my quote from that memorandum. This memorandum then discusses allegations regarding specific pilots and organizations and how they were handled by the agency. While we are not yet in a position to vouch for these conclusions, we'll have to look at all the documentation that underlay them. These documents illustrate the agency's view of the matter in 1987 and in 1988. Other studies may have been conducted by the agency in the 80s. However, we have not yet been able to find or review such other studies as might exist. And that, sir, is my effort to try to bring you up to speed on the reviews conducted by the CIA that we have been able to uncover so far without getting into the kind of vetting and examination of what lay behind them to see if there's substance to it. In closing, I would like to assure you and the American public that my office will conduct as thorough a review as possible of all available information and will report what we find candidly and completely. Over the past 5 years, I believe we have earned a reputation for independence and objectivity as a result of dealing in this fashion with other highly significant and controversial subjects. These have included the Aldrich Ames investigation, human rights abuses in Guatemala, the Paris Compromise, the BNL scandal, and many others that are not as well known outside our venue. In many ways, and I want to underscore this, Mr. Chairman and Senator Kerry, Senator Robb, in many ways, the recent allegations of CIA involvement in narcotics trafficking are the most controversial, politically charged, and potentially damaging of any that we've looked at. While some may choose not to believe findings that do not correspond to their preconceptions, we will present the unvarnished truth as we find it, and will do so to the best of our abilities. We welcome the support of the oversight committees and believe it will be essential to the credibility of our findings, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hitz. Before turning to Mr. Bromwich, could you give us an estimate, a guesstimate, a ballpark figure as to how long it's going to take you?
Well, I tried to sketch, Mr. Chairman, the enormity of the document review that we're going to have to undertake. I believe, and
I think you've done that fairly well. Now we'd like to know how long it's going to take.
I would not like to give you a specific date, sir. I think it would just be premature at this time. But I give you my solemn assurance that we will expend the resources on it, and this committee, I know, will verify that that is the case, to move on this as thoroughly and as quickly as we can. It's our top priority. Dr. Deutsch has made it clear that it's his top priority as well.
Mr. Hitz, I think we need more than that. Why don't you go back to the drawing board and take a look at the documents you have and take a look at the parameters and take a look at your resources and figure out what you can use and give us a projection as to how long it is going to take?
I'll attempt to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We now turn to the Inspector General for the Department of Justice, Mr. Michael R. Bromwich. Mr. Bromwich, thank you for coming, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, Senator Kerry, Senator Robb, I have a brief opening statement that I would like to introduce for the record.
It will be admitted in full, and you may proceed orally as you choose.
Thank you very much, Senator. I do not want to talk about the issues that are discussed in my prepared testimony. Obviously, I invite any questions that you may have. I want to sketch a little bit about how this committee and the American people can be assured that our inquiry will explore independently, fairly, objectively, exactly what the Justice Department's involvement was in the allegations as first framed by the San Jose Mercury. For better or for worse, Mr. Chairman, I'm not a stranger either to issues of narcotics distribution nor to issues relating to Iran-Contra. I served for 4 years as a narcotics prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, first under John Martin, who is now a federal judge, and for the bulk of my tenure under now Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. We did not in that office do street-level drug cases. We focused on high-level narcotics trafficking, both in cocaine and in heroin. The largest cases I tried, the last of which was in December of '86, focused specifically on large rings of people. The last case involved elements of Italian organized crime who were making deals with drug dealers down here in D.C., and the sales were ultimately made directly into the African-American community here in the District of Columbia. I was in that office, Senator, responsible as Deputy Chief of Narcotics for supervising the work of from 20 to 22 lawyers who did nothing but focus on high-level narcotics trafficking cases. Shortly before I left the office in December of 1986, I was named the chief of the narcotics unit by Mr. Giuliani. I left that office, Senator, to work for the Iran-Contra Independent Counsel, Lawrence Walsh. I began my service with him in January of 1987. I was one of the first 7 lawyers hired by Judge Walsh. Let me just quickly sketch some of the things that I did while in that office that I think do bear at least some relevance to the inquiry that my agency is going to begin and that your body is going to be working on. During the early phases of that investigation, a colleague of mine and I focused on allegations that there had been illegal fundraising on behalf of the Contras, and that in particular, certain individuals, most notably Carl Channel and Richard Miller, had worked together with Lieutenant Colonel North in soliciting wealthy American individuals to provide money, large contributions, to the Contras. There was a specific representation by Lieutenant Colonel North and his colleagues that, in fact, the Contras were in desperate need of weapons. They assigned particular dollar values to the weapons and made very elaborate presentations to wealthy individuals. That's all a part of the public record, both with the House and Senate Select Committees as well as that of my office. We early on secured guilty pleas, both from Mr. Channel and Mr. Miller, who pled guilty to, in fact, misusing a tax-exempt foundation to solicit contributions for the Contras and specifically to buy weapons for the Contras. I was, Mr. Chairman, Senators, responsible for coordinating the overall grand jury investigation during the first 2.5 years of Iran-Contra. In approximately the fall of 1987, I headed a team of approximately 7 lawyers and approximately the same number of FBI and other law enforcement agents who were specifically looking at possible criminal misconduct on the part of employees of the Central Intelligence Agency, the Department of State, as well as private individuals who were involved in the resupply network. Out of that team, as I'm sure you recall, came the indictment of former Costa Rican Station Chief Joseph Fernandez, and that case, as you know, was aborted subsequently in the latter stages of 1989 because the Department of Justice, which as you well know was completely separate and independent from our work as the independent counsel, refused to release the documents and declassify the documents that our office needed in order to pursue that matter.
Were you dissatisfied with that?
Very much so.
now you have the power to get into the inside of that as the Inspector General of the Department of Justice?
I do. Part of the problem, obviously, is going to be framing an inquiry that can be done in some reasonable period of time, and I really want to work with this committee in trying to determine what framing makes sense. So that
we're going to come to that, but here you are, having been an adversary of the Department of Justice. Now you're the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. I'm not suggesting a conflict of interest because you work for the United States. You work for the people of the United States on both occasions.
I certainly do.
How will you be able to proceed on that?
Well, that is currently not within the scope of our investigation. If this committee or others ask us to look directly into this, I will certainly do so. I have to be obviously very careful not to pursue an investigative agenda here that others may think may derive from trying to settle old scores or probe into something that I have a particular and individual interest in. I just throw that out. I'm happy to have further discussions with you and with members of the committee about that.
Well, on the surface, it looks to me as if it's relevant, but I don't want to draw any final conclusions at this. I don't want to do it on horseback today.
Thank you. Senator, from January of 1989 through May of 1989, I was one of the 3 courtroom lawyers for the United States of America in the prosecution of Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. As you recall, some of the newspapers I've seen recently suggest that that case ended in an acquittal. It did not. Lieutenant Colonel North was convicted of 3 felonies in that case. His conviction was only reversed subsequently by the Court of Appeals. I was in that office for 2.5 years. I've described in brief detail what my overall responsibilities were. I left that office in October of 1989 and returned to the private practice of law and did that for approximately 4 years. I was nominated in the late winter of 1994 and took office in June 1994 as the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. I have not dealt with an issue since I've been Inspector General. I've dealt with some very sensitive and very important ones that has resonated so clearly both with the Congress and with the American people. When I first became aware of these allegations in mid-September, I obviously wanted to examine what the allegations were. I reviewed the articles in the San Jose Mercury, and it seemed to me that there were enough troubling questions about the points of contact between individuals employed by different components of the Justice Department and the allegations that drew together the CIA and the Contras and the introduction of crack cocaine into south central Los Angeles that I thought it was very important to launch an investigation. To clarify the record, I did so on my own without being directed by anyone, either inside the department or outside the department.
We compliment you for that, Mr. Bromwich.
Thank you. Since that time, I have spent time, because I think it's important, dealing with the representatives of people in the affected communities to try to assure them that, given my background and the reputation that my office has, that we will do our very best to try to get to the bottom of this and to explore fully what the involvement, if any, of Department of Justice employees was with these allegations. Indeed, the very day that I decided to open the investigation, I met with Congresswoman Waters, who's here today. I subsequently met with her again. She facilitated an introduction to me to Gary Webb, the author of the San Jose Mercury articles, and I have talked with Mr. Webb on subsequent occasions. I then proceeded to talk to other members on both sides of the aisle who clearly had an interest in this matter and having the investigation done properly and well. I met with your counterpart, Senator Specter, Mr. Combest, the chairman of HPSI, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, as well as Mr. Dix. I met with Julian Dixon, who is a senior member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and whose district in California borders on south central Los Angeles. And I also met with Juanita Melender McDonald, who is a congressperson, as Ms. Waters is, from south central Los Angeles. They made me even more aware than I already was of the importance of our investigation and the fact that we were facing deep cynicism and distrust of the federal government and even with the Department of Justice. I just returned last night, Senators, from what for me was an extraordinary trip to south central Los Angeles. I was invited to do so by Congresswoman Melender McDonald to meet with some community leaders so that they would have a chance to meet firsthand with the person who is going to be conducting one of the investigations that touches on these issues. I won't say that that trip was roundly endorsed by others in the department. It was an extraordinary trip, but I certainly felt a responsibility to go out there and do whatever I could.
It was not roundly endorsed by others in the department? Was it opposed?
I'd prefer not to talk about that in public
You brought the
session.
subject up.
Okay. It was opposed by some. And while I was out in Los Angeles, I met with a number of people. I met with a group of approximately 30 to 35 community leaders. I met with the mayor of Los Angeles. I met with the membership of the County Board of Supervisors. I met with, yesterday, a group of from 12 to 15 clergymen from the South Central area who I am told represented about 50,000 or so parishioners in South Central LA. And what I tried to tell them is what I'm going to tell you and the American people here today, is that don't rush to any conclusions. What I ask is for people to keep an open mind and let us do our work. The facts and nothing but the facts will drive our investigation and its conclusions. And I don't think anybody at this point is in a position to say whether those allegations are true or they are not true. When I decided to open this investigation on September 20th, I immediately put into place a team, and within a week, we had a very comprehensive documents request that went out to all components of the Department of Justice. We have already started to receive the products of that work, and it looks to be that the documents that the Justice Department has that deal with Meneses and Blandone and Ross and others are in fact quite voluminous. Right now we have a team of 9 or 10 that are assigned to the matter, and I will preempt your question and tell you that that, in my judgment, will not be enough. And I'm in the process of trying to get additional resources to supplement my team. That really is all I want to say at this point, Senator. I take this investigation and the responsibilities that it imposes on me and my office very seriously. I will only mention that I think the work that we have done in my office since I took office should establish that we are capable of calling the tough ones toughly, and as we see them. We did, I think, the definitive review of allegations relating to the Good Old Boy Roundup, around which there were serious allegations of racial misconduct and other kinds of misconduct in a law enforcement-related gathering in southeastern Tennessee from 1980 to 1995. We told the whole story there and laid out that, in fact, some of the worst of the racial allegations were, in fact, true. We recently completed a review of...
That was a Department of Treasury matter, wasn't it? Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms?
Well, there were more Treasury Department employees who attended than Justice Department, but early on we had information that there were a number of Justice Department employees attended as well, and I thought it was my responsibility to explore that, even though it wasn't given my publicity.
How did the Treasury Department do on that investigation?
I think their investigation was a less complete one than ours. That's why I refer to ours as, I think, the definitive
They still
study.
haven't admitted to any failings in the Ruby Ridge matter. I don't know if they ever will. Right up to the Secretary of the Treasury.
Is that a question for me?
No, it's a statement. My question was how they did on your investigation. I just wanted to see on one that you ran side by side with them.
The other investigation that I would draw your attention to is one that we completed in June of this year, involving allegations that the Congressional Task Force on Immigration Reform, led by Representative Gallegly of California, was deceived by high-level officials within the Immigration and Naturalization Service who conspired to create a Potemkin village, if you will, a false appearance to facilities at the Chrome Detention Facility and Miami International Airport. We found that, in fact, the deception had taken place and that high-level officials in the INS were responsible for it. We recommended in our report that 13 officials of the Immigration and Naturalization Service be disciplined to some extent, up through and including termination. Those are just a couple of the special investigations that we've done. We also have going right now investigations of the FBI lab, which I'm sure you're aware of, and other matters as well. That's all that I would care to say in this statement, but I'm obviously I'm all too happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bromwich, and we commend you for meeting with the community leaders. I think that is very important to let them know what you are doing, which is what we're trying to do today, to let them as well as others know what we are doing, what you are doing, and that the matter will be pursued. I'm glad to hear you have 9 investigators. When you sent us over your statement yesterday, you say you had 3 attorneys as well as additional investigators, both here and on the West Coast. Is the total of 9, or is that 9 attorneys?
9 to 10. No, it's not 9 attorneys. I don't have 9 attorneys who are experienced in doing these kinds of investigations.
Well, you say you do not have enough people.
That's correct.
Have you determined what does constitute enough?
I won't know until we see more of what the volume of documents are. But it is clear to me that I will not be able to suffice simply with the former prosecutors that I have on my staff. And as I've done in some of our other investigations, both in the Roundup investigation, the Miami INS investigation, and the FBI labs, I will be seeking people from other parts of the Justice Department, hopefully very experienced people who have done complex investigations like that to supplement my own team.
Well, how about the ultimate question? How long will it take you to complete your work?
I am under oath in front of the House Judiciary Committee when I testified in September that I will never again become a prisoner of my own estimates. I did under duress from...
Well, this is the Senate, Mr. Bromley.
I understand that. I understand that. I'm not going to give you a precise estimate. I will tell you that I will do everything that I can to do a comprehensive investigation that will leave as few questions on the Justice Department side of things unanswered, and will do it as fast as I possibly can.
Now, Mr. Bromwich, do you have to be called before the Judiciary Committee to get an estimate?
Pardon me? No, I'm not. I'm going to give them the same answer, Senator. I think it's unfair to you. I think it's unfair to the public to give you an estimate that is based really on very little knowledge.
Well, permit me to disagree with you. I would like you to assess what you see the scope to be and what you see the need for personnel to be, and to give us a projection of a timetable. I'm only jesting with you about Judiciary, which has oversight over the Department of Justice. We have some overlap in membership, including mine, but just as I've asked Mr. Hitz to do that, I would ask you to do that. I think we need a time frame, and we need some mileposts, and we need to have some congressional oversight as to where you're going.
Senator,
I'm very unhappy. Let me say this for the record today. I've already said it with the Justice investigation of Ruby Ridge.
I was not involved in that,
well,
Senator.
I know you weren't, but it's your department. That investigation started in August of 1995 only because the Senate undertook an investigation. And there have been a lot of people who are hanging in the wind there. And just yesterday, an information was returned, and I have pressed your department for an answer, and they won't give me one.
I'm well aware of that matter, Senator.
As to what is going to be done. I don't think we can wait for 15 months and then begin to wonder when it's going to be done.
I am happy to be in close touch with you, Senator, with Senator Kerry, with Senator Robb, with everybody on the Judiciary Committees and the Intelligence Committees to let you know how we are proceeding and what the scope of our investigation is. I think that is evolving to some extent as we sit here today. The estimate that I gave to Congressman Gallegly and other members of the task force was that if everything went right, and nothing ever does, as you know, Senator, I thought we might be able to get it done in 3 months. It took us 11. All of them agreed that it was worth waiting for because we were blocked at various key points by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. But I am not going to pin myself into an estimate at this early in an investigation. I don't think it's, I understand your interest in doing so, but I must tell you, Mr. Chairman, that I'm extremely reluctant to do so because I've had bad experiences with it in the recent past.
Well, it may be that your estimate of 3 months enabled you to get it done as early as 11 months. I understand your reluctance, and I've had some experience in the matters myself, and I know it's hard to estimate, but this committee wants an estimate. If it turns out to be a guesstimate or a ballpark figure, we like to have some idea as to what you're going to be doing and your resources and your parameters.
I'm happy to give unlimited amounts of information about that, Senator. I just don't want to be put into a number estimate at this point.
Well, I'd like you to reconsider that. When you say in your statement that you do not have jurisdiction over CIA employees, that raises a concern on my part as to whether you're going to have access to CIA employees. You don't have jurisdiction over the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department or the California Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement. And the Mercury story says that, quote, agents from 4 organizations, DEA, U.S. Customs, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and the California Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement, have complained that investigations were hampered by the CIA or unnamed, quote, national security interests, enter quote, close quote. Now, one of the questions I have for you and for Mr. Hitz is, how are you going to deal with that? If it's going to be investigated by this committee, we have authority to go beyond your own department. Although I'll tell you this, we've had some terrible results asking the Department of Defense to say anything to this committee. So we haven't done too well on that either, although we had moved for a subpoena on one matter. But how are you going to deal with these groups outside your jurisdiction? Do you really have the competency? Does Mr. Hitz have the competency to conduct this investigation, or does it have to be done by a congressional committee?
I think that we have the jurisdiction to get at a lot of it, and to tell the whole story of what the Justice Department did and didn't do with respect to some of these matters, I fully expect to have to go outside the Justice Department, not only to the CIA, but to the other agencies that you've just mentioned.
Well, what do you mean?
I can't compel them to provide the information, but I certainly have learned in my 2-year tenure on the job that a specific and public statement in a final report or elsewhere that somebody has failed to cooperate with us is a powerful incentive to get people to cooperate with us and to give us access to witnesses and documents that we need to do our job.
Mr. Bromwich, I have to disagree with you about that. I don't think a statement on the final report that somebody's failed to cooperate with you is nearly forceful enough. You do not have subpoena power.
We have administrative subpoena power. We do not have
within your department.
No, we have administrative subpoena power more broadly than that, Senator.
Well, can you use that administrative subpoena power to go after the California Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement if they won't comply?
If they will not voluntarily comply, I'm fully prepared to use the administrative subpoena.
Do you have the authority on your own to issue those subpoenas?
Yes, I do.
How about you, Mr. Hitz?
I don't have subpoena authority, Mr. Chairman, and I share the same concern that you do, that when our investigation bumps up into other agencies, we're going to count on getting their full cooperation. You'll recall, Senator Specter, you were the father, one of the fathers of the Inspector General provision.
I was the grandfather, Charles Battaglia, the staff director. Was
well, the parentage will still hold up. The point being that you have directed us in that statute to come back to this committee when we find that the lack of subpoena power or the lack of cooperation with any other entity makes it impossible to do our job, and we will do that. But I think that between Mr. Bromwich and myself, we can cover an awful lot of ground, and I think we'll just have to keep this committee informed as to bumps in the road if we encounter them.
Well, perhaps we ought to consider, we do have continuing jurisdiction as to whether we ought to be the vehicle for subpoenas. Mr. Bromwich, who enforces your administrative subpoena?
We do. My office has its own Office of General Counsel.
And how do you do that? You go to court to get an order to enforce your subpoena?
We do.
Mm-hmm. And the Attorney General has no say over what you do?
That's correct.
Well, okay, you've made some strong statements about your subpoena power.
I have. If we are making wishes for what we would like to have, I think the fact that I don't have testimonial subpoena power severely restricts the ability that I have.
Well, what is the scope, then, of what you describe as administrative subpoena power?
For documents and things, ducus tecum, the equivalent of either trial subpoenas, ducus tecum, or grand jury subpoenas, ducus tecum.
Well, that's very limited if you can't subpoena witnesses.
It certainly is. And I have, for a long time, thought it was very important, just for an inquiry such as this, that we have testimonial subpoena power. We don't.
Well, I'm very concerned about the tools that you have at your disposal to move interagency and move beyond the federal government to state agencies or local agencies. Senator Kerry?
Well, Mr. Chairman, following along that line, I mean, I had a whole series of questions that address the difficulty that both of you are going to face, and I must say that one of the problems may be here that we're going to have a bar that's much too high that you're never going to be able to satisfy. In other words, let's say, Mr. Hitz, produce your report. Let's say you get it done in 50 days. You produce your report. The constraints on the Inspector General for the CIA are considerable. I mean, you will have national security concerns. You've got to produce a declassified document.
That's correct, sir.
And the suspicions are going to be rather substantial that the declassified document left out information that could have been damaging to the CIA. The perception of lack of independence is going to be there. My guess is it's going to be difficult to produce. I mean, we just spent God, I don't know how many months with a special committee of the Senate looking at Whitewater, special committee of the House looking at Travelgate. Nobody died in those deals. It seems to me, I mean, both Senator Robb and I participated in one on the POWMIA issue when it became Senator Kerry chaired as well, Senator John Kerry, where the evidence was that perhaps the government of the United States had not done all that they should have. I mean, I like your opinion as to whether or not, given your understanding of what's going on in the public and their attitude towards the CIA, whether or not we're asking the Inspector Generals of the Department of Justice and the Central Intelligence Agency to do something that they, in fact, are not going to be able to do satisfactorily.
Well, I think, Senator Kerry, you're quite right to point out the fact that we can take the horse to water, but we can't force him to drink. If we produce a report that doesn't meet this high bar that you speak of, we're going to get second-guessed. But my suggestion would be, on the key matter that you just raised, for example, about declassification materials. Now, you've got Director Deutsch's firm assurance that he's going to push that as hard as he can. He has nothing to defend here. It wasn't on his watch. He wants to get to the bottom of it. I tend to hold him to it, and I know you do too, on the declassification matter. Secondly, as to whether or not we'll get the whole story, I would suppose that at the end of the day, you will look at what we come up with, and if you determine that it is wanting, you will jump in and finish the job. I basically feel that we ought to be given a chance to find out what went on. I perhaps have enough to do just to look at the records that were generated in CIA as a consequence of the Kerry examination, as a consequence of Iran-Contra, as a consequence of our own look-sees, before I start thinking about Department of Defense or some other outfit that might be involved.
I guess, I mean, what I'm wondering is whether or not it would be advisable for you to produce, both of you, an interim report that would not be final. Lord knows, I mean, we're basically asking you to get back and give us some idea of how long it's going to take you to do your work, and likewise with you, Mr. Hitz, are you qualified, do you think, to make an evaluation as to whether or not the IG itself is going to be able to satisfactorily complete this investigation, you know, given that one of the things we're trying to do is both not only get to the bottom of it, but do it in such a fashion that in a non-emotional way people look at the facts and reach the conclusion based upon what the facts say.
All we can do, Senator, is our best, and you can get it from us.
I understand that, but let me redirect the question, or restate the question. I guess I don't want to redirect it. You redirected it, I think. But are you qualified to make a judgment, or do you feel any constraint to make a judgment to us that would include the possibility of you saying, this is just, you know, the IG cannot do what you're asking us to do. You're asking us to do something that we may not be able, in fact, complete.
Well, let's take a for instance, because I think this is a very sound question. Let's take a for instance that after we finish our document review, we seek to interview individuals who may or have been alleged to have been involved in this from a period that we've already stated takes us back into the 80s. They may not wish to speak to us. And at that point, it seems to us that we will have to come forward and tell this committee, tell the director, that that is the case. Well, that's a clear potential limitation, which we hope we would be able to overcome through suasion, but we, as I say, don't have subpoena power, and it may not be possible.
But again, what I'm asking you, both Mr. Bromwich and you, Mr. Hitz, is are you liberated to reach a conclusion that the IG may not be able to satisfactorily do this investigation? And whether it's because of personnel or because of other restrictions that may be upon you. And you know what yours are. I mean, the chairman and I have been struggling to try to get documents declassified so we could get them out public and to put it mildly, but not a very satisfactory process. And it leaves hanging out there questions. Instead of answering questions, it ends up provoking more. And I mean, I'd be very direct again, and would be very much grateful for a yes or no answer. Do you feel like in your arsenal of words that you have the word no, I can't do this? This is you've asked me to do something, Mr. Director, and let me just get right back to you, Mr. Director Deutsch, and say I just went up and appeared before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and listened to what Chairman Specter was asking me and the questions that he asked and the answers that I'm given, and I'm telling you, I don't think we can do this. I think this is going to lead to the production of a report that may provoke more questions than it answers. Yes or no? Do you feel liberated to be able to say we've taken a look at this thing and we can't do it? We should not. This is not something. Perhaps the IG can be supportive of another evaluation, another investigation, but we should understand what's going on here. The public's going to say it's the IG report that we're looking at. Whatever the IG report, you are doing the investigation of this entire matter. Both of you are. And I look to you again for an answer directly. Are you prepared, if you reach the conclusion, if either one of you, and I appreciate an answer from both of you, if you reach the conclusion that this effort is outside the scope of what the IG can do, are you prepared to say to your bosses that a different process needs to be set in place?
Let me answer that, Senator Kerry. I want to remind you that no question was put to me, no direction was given to me. It was my decision independently to examine these allegations, and I only did so at the time because I believed we could do a credible job, comprehensive, and independent job of examining these allegations. Now, the scope of this investigation obviously is changing. I'm a little worried that it's going to become an amoeba, and it's going to take entirely too much time, that it's not fair to ask this committee or the people to wait. But I will tell you,
an amoeba or an octopus?
Either, Senator, either.
Well, I mean,
I was confident and am confident that at least on the Justice Department side, we will be able to explore many, if not all, of the questions that have been raised with respect to the allegations as first framed by the Mercury.
Mr. Roberts, you have independently reached the conclusion that an IG evaluation of this is necessary.
Yes, sir.
Are you prepared, if you reach the conclusion that an IG evaluation of this would be insufficient, are you prepared then to say to the Attorney General of the United States of America that we have a situation here where the IG is not going to be able to do this work? And likewise to you, Mr. Hitz, if you reach the conclusion that this work is going to fall outside the scope of the IG's office, are you prepared to say to Director Deutsch, Mr. Director, I can't do this work?
Yes, I'm prepared to do so, and I would obviously tell this committee that at the same time.
I'm prepared to do so as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kerry. Senator Robb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The essential questions that concerned me earlier have been answered, but let me ask just one question that might refine it in terms of how we proceed from this point forward. Are you confident in proceeding with the tools that are available to you at the moment, which include the lack of subpoena power in the CIA context and the lack of anything but administrative or to take them subpoena power for the Justice Department, that if you proceeded and ran into obstacles that you could not overcome, that by proceeding now without requesting additional tools at the outset, that you would prejudice any result or activities that might be required to be taken down the line? In other words, do you incur any risk by proceeding with the tools that are now at your disposal?
I have some measure of confidence in the tools that I have at my disposal, and I'm certainly prepared to recognize limits on them. I believe that given the assessment that I have now, the tools that we do have versus the risks of going forward, and when I ultimately may conclude that we can't go far enough, I think the risk is relatively small, and I think the public interest is in permitting me and Mr. Hitz separately to go forward.
Mr. Hitz?
I think, Senator Robb, that I can get the tools that I need to do it, and I can assure this committee and assure you personally that if I don't, you will know about it. And I don't think the point that you raised by not being able to foretell all that we'll need at the present time is prejudicial as far as I can see. I mean, we have, for example, we can't reach former employees. The classification power belongs to the Director of Central Intelligence, not to us, but with respect to that, Director Deutsch has made it clear that he wants to declassify this. He wants a public record on this as much as he can, and we're going to hold him to it. And you'll know if he will be the first to tell you if he's got a problem.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that perhaps, and this is consistent with your request for a finite or specific timeline, that some regular interim reports about progress to the committee, not as extensive as a full interim report by any means, but simply an indication of progress and the availability or lack of availability of necessary tools or resources to continue the project in accordance with the timeline that has been generally agreed to, i.e. is to proceed as rapidly as possible to come to a factual conclusion would be appropriate. I have no further questions.
Thank you very much, Senator Robb. I think we do have to maintain continuing oversight as to what is going on here. One of the options of the committee is to run the investigation ourselves, and that is a difficult thing to do for a lot of reasons, but I have grave reservations, as we've expressed them, and Senator Kerry has, and Senator Robb raises the question about how we're going to do it, as to whether you have sufficient authority. And the brutal fact of life is that even when Congress, when committees ask the executive branch to disclose materials, it is very, very difficult, somewhere between very, very difficult to impossible to get them disclosed in a timely manner. And Mr. Bloom has testified about that, and I could tell you war stories about it which support it. And we have a matter here which is very, very important and a lot of public concern and justified public concern, and it is a part of the overall skepticism about what goes on in government. In this room we had last year the hearings of the militia, brought the militia in to find out what was troubling America to lead to the growth of millions of people in the militias. And we've had the instances in Guatemala, which this committee has gone into. And we've talked about the Ruby Ridge hearings, and it is really important that the American people have confidence in what is being done by way of oversight, and that is a job for Congress, a job for members to do, and exercise the maximum leverage. We have some tools that you don't have. We have the power to hold up confirmations. We also have the power to hold up appropriations. We look for comity within the executive branch to the legislative branch, and very often we do not get it. And there are quite a number of matters just like that on my mind at this moment. So we would press you, both Mr. Hitz and Mr. Bromwich, to go back to the drawing boards and define the scope of your inquiry, analyze your resources, and come back to us with a game plan. And we will have to participate in the game plan, and we obviously have the authority to proceed with our own hearings, both in closed session and in open session. But I think this has been a very useful proceeding in summarizing to some extent what we now know, and to give as positive assurance as we can to people in this room and people who are looking at what is going on here, that we are determined to get to the bottom of it, and we will. That concludes our hearing. Thank you all very much.